we're going to talk about Conor McGregor, and this will be an interesting one because of his rumor that he's going to run for president of Ireland. And I think just giving the background of what the president does in Ireland will be key to kind of understanding a little bit more about Ireland compared to its parliamentary system that goes on virtually there and throughout the European Union, where it's almost a job for life if you kind of get the right constituency that keeps voting you in. But on that regard, the president comes around every couple of years, and it's a real chance to get someone new in there that has kind of the right to have a say, but it's voted on by the general population, and it should be a good watch because I think the general president right now he's termed out, so they have to look for a new face, and it should be a good a bit of soap opera, I believe.
Interesting. I wasn't sure what the terms were there, or if there were term limits. So that's interesting to hear, because this guy who's the president right now, he's been in for quite a while. It seems like he's been kind of around, for quite a few years.
I would say, yeah, I don't know the exact term limits. I should have looked it up actually before this, but we'll get to the audience throughout the course of this web chat. But it's, I think it's like 4, 5, 6 years per term, and he's going, I think it's 2 terms. So he's termed out because we had like 2 women before him, a woman named Mary McAleese and another woman called Mary Robinson.
Right.
And they became like pretty big in kind of politics afterwards. And it's, again, more like a job for like the Queen of England. They open up Parliament, they have some kind of good veto rights, which we'll explain, but ultimately it's like a pomp and circumstances type situation. President Biden comes over, he's going to meet with the president. It's supposed to be politically neutral, but unfortunately it's certainly anything but. But we have this guy's quite interesting because he looks like a little leprechaun. And I always call him, like, he's short and he's stouty and he has, and I always kind of like, finally they got like a little leprechaun to actually represent the Irish people. And it's kind of funny to see him, but he's pretty left wing and always has been his entire career. And I watched some clips before this podcast, and it's again, a guy from a broken house in Limerick, which anybody who knows Ireland, Limerick is kind of, the rough and tumble place. It's where Angela's Ashes was, that famous book was kind of centered around. Right. And he moved in with his parents from Clare, but he was always very left wing, super left wing, where, he's attacking Elon Musk right now. And so there's no nonpartisan to it, but it'll be interesting if Conor McGregor gets in here, that will flip the script, because the deep state will go absolutely crazy. And I think it's worth us just discussing that, because I don't think they're going to stop him like no tomorrow. I mean, you think it's bad what they're doing with Trump. It's going to be a factor of 10 with Conor McGregor, where I would say he's already intimidated not to take this on. I think it was maybe a knee gut reaction to get some press, because that's going to be a recipe for disaster. They need a like-minded person. And just because at the end of the day, Parliament vote on a law, but the president virtually, as the pomp and circumstances, has to stamp it, and if it's not in line with, say, the Constitution, they could delay it. They can send it to the Supreme Court to review it. They can send it back to Parliament if the Supreme Court says it's not constitutional, which I don't think they'll ever do, because, again, Ireland, there's only one political party. It's a uniparty. They have 2 main parties, but it's virtually a uniparty. They all think the same. It's all left-wing socialist type mentality. And Conor McGregor's not that person. And to be the guy who would have the veto right on a law such as the hate crime speech law that we talked about in the last episode, I think they're going to do everything they can to call it a day on him, from probably going after his agent. He is in the UFC, so that's, good going for him. I mean, it's kind of, we would consider almost a right-wing organization at this point, every time Trump steps out. But I mean, he still has a lot of business interests in Ireland, whether it be, his prop something whiskey, which is, quite valuable. And, who knows after that, whether the inspectors are going to come in and have some food and drug relation issues with it. So it would be interesting just to chat around that.
Well, he's also not part of the club. He's not a politician. He hasn't been around this guy who's in now, Higgins, he's been in the presidency since 2011, so 12 years already. But even before that, he was like mayor of Galway, and he had a history. He's in the group. He's been in both political parties, or I take that back. He was initially, it says here, he was Fianna Fáil, and then he's Labour, but he's still been a part of the system forever. I mean, he's in his 80s, for crying out loud. Conor McGregor is a loud, bombastic guy. I mean, he backs it up, but
every year is my fucking year.
But I think his fighting days are more or less behind him, if I'm not mistaken. And he is, it's the business interests that are going to be at the forefront for him. And I don't think that the powers that be in Ireland are going to want him representing the country when another head of state comes into town, or on the world stage, because he's loud. He's, I think one of the things with Ireland that they've got going and is sort of on brand is to be under the radar and to be that small island that's not, doesn't have the spotlight on it the way maybe a France or Germany or an Italy has. It's really different from that. It's a part of Europe, it's part of the EU, but it doesn't have all of the kind of that high profile piece that goes along with it. And Conor would definitely bring that along if he ended up even running, much less winning the presidency.
100%. And again, Ireland is running off U.S. Foreign companies. I mean, that's their bread and butter, and they're not aligned with, even if Conor McGregor will say is a right wing now, or as they would label anybody who's not center left, extremist. They're going to be upset and threaten Ireland's, cash flow issues. That's only an assumption, but that's only one example of that. But he has a loud mouth. That's what made him so popular in the UFC, that he was kind of just fun to watch and just loved running his mouth. And it would be a great thing to see him in there and just kind of mess up the status quo. But I would say, like, just even by his recent, them attacking him, really shine the light on Ireland's totalitarianism.
But what's going on in Ireland is really quite terrifying. And he's at the center of it, because you're seeing a huge reaction to what happened with this attack on 3 kids and a woman by someone who's actually a naturalized Irish citizen but came in as an Algerian. And it all goes back to this ongoing raging issue of immigration. Conor McGregor's put himself right in the middle of it. Basically, Ireland were at war. What do you make of this?
The thing that concerns me, though, and this is going to be a deeply unpopular point, but it's that to tweet something and then be investigated for it frightens me, because it's setting a quite dangerous precedent.
Well, I felt the same about Tommy Robinson.
This is what I was going to say to you, yes.
Being arrested at the weekend. I'm like, what did he do to deserve being arrested? I mean, James, this is you can abhor the people. I actually like Conor McGregor for what it's worth, but in Tommy Robinson's case, I have no truck with him whatsoever, and I think he's a pretty poisonous individual. However, I feel uncomfortable, like you did. Are we overstretching now in the way we police these things?
Yeah, I mean, clearly Ireland isn't at war, and he's just thrown himself in, whether he's drunk. But I'm more concerned about the fact that the police could be knocking at your door for a tweet.
You never see anybody on the left arrested for a tweet. You only ever see people on the right. Guys.
And that's not what they want. They want the democracy to die in darkness. And Ireland is, again, the perfect petri dish to do that. And they don't want that kind of messed up at all, because they have the sympathy of the Irish people, or the sympathy almost of the world, because of so many expats that, moved out of Ireland into foreign countries. And that's kind of their, the government's argument is like, well, we were allowed to colonize the rest of the world. Why don't we let people into our country to do that? And the response from everybody's like, yeah, but we worked. We didn't come and kind of suck off the system. Where, I was listening to a podcast in prep for this, and the guy's like, look, my wife's mom just sold a house to a guy who has no income, but somehow has 500 grand to buy a house, and he pulled from Ukraine. He pulled up in like a crappy Porsche He's there like a couple months and he's already buying $500,000 house, which is virtually outpricing other people, you know, the young millennials that are trying to get a foothold. And it's just like, this is the problem that they're having. It's just, they're not working the system. They're working with the system, and kind of what the Irish did were, you know, far and away with Tom Cruise. They're the ones that are going into the mines and blowing them up, you know, send the Irish guy in there. They're doing the difficult jobs, or they're the ones who are fighting in the Civil War. That's not, they're the ones who are building the UK and Ireland, or UK and US. That's not what's happening here. It's the stabbing, for example, that created the riots. That guy was on the dole, or the government, for 10, 15 years, and he should have been deported, and they stopped him. And he was caught with a knife trying to do the same thing like a couple months before, and they let him go.